OK button. Look for a red stop broadcast button.
Yep, it's there.
OK, then I think you can minimize the recording window.
And hopefully it won't crash.
Hopefully.
And there we go.
And then I'll just remind you at the end to bring
Stop
that
broadcasting.
window back up. Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So we're doing Adobe Illustrator, and a couple things. Just want to make clear. My name's Jennifer. My background is in graphic design, but moved into interactive pretty quickly over 15 years ago, creating graphics for mobile, Windows apps, iOS, and websites, and all sorts of things. In fact, we work on a Drupal site ourselves, and so I'm a big fan of Illustrator. I absolutely hate Photoshop for interactive design. And I know a lot of people use it, but the reason why Illustrator is so much better is, number one, it's vector, so that you can export your files in a scalable format. Like you can use SVG if you want to, or at least you can go back to an original that's not done in pixels and resize it. The other thing is layers in Photoshop are a real big disaster for somebody who does not know Photoshop. So you pass on your files and somebody has to change the letter E in Word, and they've got to find the layer it's on, and then they've got to get the right tool, and it adds probably 100% more time onto editing existing files. So everyone that we typically work with, even our developers, we try to get them to even get a copy of Illustrator, just because that way we can send our files and they can copy and paste stuff right out of here. You'll see that I'm going to start out by just doing some easy things in here, like creating some logos or maybe taking logos and making changes. But the fact that I can export them in so many different file formats and sizes, the fact that it's got actions built in so that I can build my wireframe in and export every single graphic independently in about 3 seconds or less is huge. And also the fact that I can export not only the SVG code, so even for a gradient, I could do a gradient, and then I can export that code for somebody to use, and even export my CSS. So I'm not a developer. I was an MVP with Microsoft for 3 years for a program called Blend. So I kind of bridged into development. I understand enough to be dangerous, I always say, but I do know that if I'm supplying information to my developer, they absolutely love the fact that I can give them some code to start and to build styles off and such. So how many of you guys use Illustrator now? I know you do, right? Okay, you do, okay. Some of you, and some of you have never seen it before, or, okay. All right, so it is an Adobe product. You can, everything's subscription now for Adobe. You can subscribe to just Illustrator if you want. If I were a developer, I would probably get a copy of this. It's like $20 a month for the subscription, but then you have access to do a whole lot of things if you're working with your clients and such, as far as cleaning up files or checking their files or exporting things yourself or whatever it may be. So just starting out, just give you an idea, this is our members page, and just showing you how Illustrator works. It's basically has a bunch of tools that you click and drag, and you pull these shapes out and you can change them, blah, blah, blah. You know, pretty simple and easy to understand how I'm creating my shapes in here. But typically when people are working in Illustrator, it is to create artwork. And so I've got this is called an artboard right here, where I've got everything in this particular image. I'm going to go ahead and create a new artboard and start from scratch, and then I'll come back to this. But if I choose that I'm creating a new file, you'll see that I can choose that I'm doing a mobile app, and then I even have templates for different mobile devices. Now I can change these. I don't have to use these if I don't want, but I select mobile, and then I'm selecting the iPhone 6, and it gives me the size there, which I can edit. And then I just click OK, and it gives me an artboard already ready to go as a designer. So let's say that I'm creating a logo in here that I want to send to my developer, or I want to create a wireframe. I'm going to go ahead first of all and select just the ellipse tool. You'll see I'm just using the tools on the right. I'm taking something, I'm going to go up and I'm going to take advantage of what are called panels on the right to bring up my swatches and say that I want this to be yellow. And then using Illustrator, and the whole reason I'm doing this, by the way, is so you guys can see how fluid it is. Obviously, in an hour, I can't teach you how to use Illustrator in total, but hopefully you pick up on stuff and you're like, yeah, I remember you could do that. But I'm holding down my Alt key because I'm on a PC, Option if you're on a Mac, and I'm just copying that circle. So I have 2 of them now. So that clones that shape. And if I select both of these now, you'll see they're both active. There's a shape builder tool that allows me to hold down my Alt or Option key and drag through and delete the one shape from another. So I'm creating maybe a moon logo or icon that I'm going to use for some artwork. I need to now maybe put a nose on this. I'm just going to make it a little guy. So I just add this little shape, and again, using the shape builder tool, I can just drag right through and say, add that to it. And now I've got a nose on that shape. And then I'm going to just give him a little smile. Maybe I'll add another shape here that I'm going to take out. So I'm creating an icon that I'm going to use for an app. And again, you don't have to be really skilled at drawing in here because it does have the tools like the shape builder where I can alt drag through and say, take that out. So I'm just kind of dissecting all this stuff. I didn't need any other skill to create this. So that's kind of creepy. We'll make it a white eye and then we'll put something in it. And I'm just going to zoom in. So hopefully, again, as you're seeing, super simple to work on. Now I've got this and I want to use it someplace. We'll give him a blue eye so he's less creepy. But I want to use this someplace. And so I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to open up something maybe that I'm working on. And when you purchase Illustrator, you also get a program called Bridge that allows you to visually see all your files and search and that sort of thing. So I'm going out to the desktop and I actually have a folder of stuff that I can use for here. And there's one that is, let's see, I'm going to find my bug art. Let's say that I'm going to create something here. I'm going to open up some additional artwork here. And I'm going to create a little bit of a layout here. Now, here's the file that I've been working on. I'm going to go ahead and save this as a native Illustrator file so I can find it easily. My mobile app. And this is just in the Illustrator file format. And next, I'm going to take some of that artwork from the other document and bring it in here. So you'll notice I have insect art, and maybe I want to use this guy. So I drag it up to that tab, and I bring it down, and then I've got my logo. And since it is not pixel, I can scale it to whatever I want because it's based on a vector design. And I'm going to go ahead and also place a sketch I've done because maybe I want to build off of this. So I have a sketch here. I'm just placing. All right. So I did this with pencil and paper, and now I want to kind of rebuild this. Couple things that I can do. One is, let me just move this out of the way. I have a pasteboard here. Oops, let me group him together. I have a pasteboard here I can use. I can drag this on top of that artboard so I can actually work on top of it. And I can use something in a layer. I can take this and I can say, I'm going to make a new layer. And this is going to be my art. And this stuff down here, I want to keep this on that separate layer. So I'm going to just drag that little radio button up. Okay, and I forgot the eyeball. Okay, so let me take all of that. Make sure I get it all and drag it up. Then I'm going to take this layer and double click on it. And I'm going to say, you know what? I want you to be a template. And that will gray out that template and it locks it so that I can just start building off my sketch and doing the best I can to kind of mimic what the idea was that I had in my mind when I started. And so I'll just go in and start creating text and that sort of thing. Illustrator fills with placeholder text to begin with, which is something that I typically turn off. I just reset my preferences, so it came back. But I'm holding down Control-Shift greater than to make my text bigger or smaller. Same keyboard shortcut works in all the Adobe Illustrator, all the Adobe applications, and even in Word and even in Outlook. But I'm just trying to build this, and anytime I want to take a look, I can just turn this off and on. Okay, so let me continue on with this and show you some of the other interesting things here. If I know that this is my logo and I'm going to use it a bunch of times, I can save it real quickly as what's called a symbol. And so if I take my symbols and I know I'm going to use this guy a lot, I can just drag and drop it in here. And it's much like symbols that you guys might be familiar with anyway, too, in coding. But every time I pull this out, it is now referencing the symbol. So I can pull it out as many times as I want. If I wanted to make a change, I could even expand that. And then I could say, you know what, I really meant to use a different color for this. And then you'll notice that if I select this and I hold down my Alt or Option key and put it on top of the other one, everything, come on, all the instances in my image are replaced instantly. So we only have one artboard. Think about this. You can have multiple artboards. In fact, I think I have some examples of things that I've done, but this is kind of a mess. This was a work in progress I just found. But it is, you have the capability of taking your artboard tool and just continually adding additional pages, either custom or matching what you've got. So if you consider the fact that you take a logo and then you decide that you're going to change it, and it changes it on 100 screens for you, that can be a huge benefit, and it also adds to consistency as well. So again, another big reason why you want to take advantage of it. Now, other things that I can do, I'm going to go ahead and put some other artwork in here. I'm going to get rid of these guys, and I'm going to go back up, and I'll take this one and this one. So let me show it. Edges right now. There we go. It's not showing what's selected. There, got this and this. And I'm pressing Control-3 just to hide some stuff I don't want to see temporarily. I can press Control-Alt-3 to bring it back anytime I want. But I'm going to go ahead and bring these logos over as well. And I'm going to place them on my sketch. And I'm holding down the Option key and grabbing the side to enlarge that from the center so that I don't have to reposition it when I'm done. Okay, so I've started to build this. And I don't obviously have time to build an entire app, but let me just show you some things that you can take advantage of right now. I'm going to go to Window. There is a window called Asset Export. And if I choose this window, you'll notice that I can take things that I want to export to my developer and just drag and drop them in there. I don't have to save them separately. I don't have to put an artboard around them. I just simply come in here, and if I want to name them, I can name them in here, Bug and Star, or whatever I want to call these. Right now, as a default, they're just called assets, which is fine, but you might want something a little bit more definitive. And then also you can add a suffix if you want to put on a particular job. Now, this is set up, if you look at the bottom, it says it's going to do one PNG, just one at 100%. But I can add a scale and also do two times and 3 times. And the really cool thing about this is it's going to save them all at once for me. So I would much rather send somebody an SVG that's scalable, but I work with a lot of developers who want a PNG. And if I'm working on iOS, I have to save 3 different sizes. If you're working on Android, you even have to save more. And the cool thing is, I'm going to X these out and go back. I can just click on iOS and it will automatically produce the scales for me. And if I click on Android, it will produce all those. Those are all the different sizes that somebody needs for Android. Instantly done. Okay, so as soon as I click on export. So I'll say this one and this one and this one, I want you to export. I can click on export. It says, where do you want to put these? I'm going to select a new folder out here, and I'm going to call it D4D done, so I can find out where these are. And actually, I don't want to do that there. I'm going to do it on my desktop. Come on. D4D done. Okay, so I'm going to select that folder and okay, it's going through all the work, but when I go out to my desktop, you'll see that all those files are in there. So there, done. So in like 3 seconds, I exported all my assets and I didn't have to change my artwork. And so prior to this version of Photoshop, in fact, if I wanted to do that, I would have to somehow independently select those items to save them. But now it makes it super easy for me to take all those exports. So as a designer, I'm just building this, and then I'm just saying, that one, that one, that one, can you take them and get them ready for my developer? I also have the option of going into an export window, which allows me to change those sizes as well. But I can also deselect and select, so I can take some, I can change the names in here as well. So it just gives you an extra window, but it also gives you the ability of saving out all your artboards. So let's say that you did a mobile app and you have 10 screens, you could export them all as PNG so that your developer has something to refer to that they can use maybe as an onion skin or something to see if they're lining things up correctly. So going back to that, even something like this. Now I'm pressing Control-Alt-3, which would be Command-Option-3 on a Mac to show all the stuff that I just hid. So I can see everything here. And it looks like somebody used these little squares, which is really helpful as backgrounds for this. But what if I know that my developer needs all these items? I can do one of two things. If I don't happen to have these squares here, I can just take a rectangle and I can just draw it around the items that I want to select, okay? Doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter what the color is, doesn't matter anything. It just has to surround my artwork. Then I can select all these rectangles, whether I create them myself or somebody else has created them. And I go to a panel, and most of your controls are going to be in the panel, so they're all under the window menu. But I go to one called Artboards. I only have one artboard here. Okay, it's that one big one. So if I save this artboard, it wouldn't do my developer a whole lot of help. But if I go to this panel here, I can say convert to artboards, and now I have all these artboards. Okay, now every one of those bugs is on an artboard, and if I select a bug, it'll show me the artboard that it's on. And if I want to, I can change the name. I just double click on it, and I can change the name of the artboard, or I can leave it just called the artboard. But now that I've done that, I can go back and I can choose File, Export, and I can choose Export for Screens, which is exactly that window that I showed you prior to this when I was in the Asset Export window. When I clicked on that little Export for Screens button, it produced the same window, except at that time I only had one artboard, so I had clicked on Assets. But in this case, I'm clicking on Artboards, and it finds all of those, and then I can say, I want to output these all for iOS. And if you don't want these particular sizes, you can custom put in your own width and height if you want. You don't have to use 1 times, 2 times, 3 times. And then now I'm going to put a suffix in, well, we'll leave it. We'll leave the one the same, the 1 time. But I'm going to export all those artboards, and you'll see it's doing 68 different saves for me. And it's going to be done in like 10 seconds. So if I come back to my done folder, you'll see now it's got all these, and they're all appropriately named. So it says, times 3 times 2 times. It doesn't say anything if it's 1 time. But again, really simple and easy to export these. So other reasons why I use Illustrator, because I'm working in here, and maybe one of my favorite sites is Icon Monster, and it's Monster without a E between the T and the R. Some guy in Germany who probably lives in his basement, I don't care, but he provides free artwork, okay, icons. And so I can come in here and search for anything, and maybe I'm looking for a truck, and no, did I not type truck? Maybe not. I'll do hand truck, because that's an interesting piece of clip art I've never seen. Oh, that doesn't look like a hand truck. Anyway, I'll take one of these. Maybe I want this thumb in here, or let me find something. I do want to find something that's got a little more content to it. No, that's weird. Figures, I picked something different for the first time, and it has an error in it. Looks like clock. Okay, so lots of different options here. But you'll notice that if I click on one, that they give you the opportunity to open it up as an EPS or an SVG, PSD, or PNG. So an EPS stands for an encapsulated PostScript file. This is something that can be opened up in Illustrator so that you can change the color, the lines, whatever. So I'll start out by just doing this as an EPS and open this up in Illustrator. And then I also want to show you the SVG. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. That's fine. Lots of OKs. But now if I click on this guy, I would just choose that I want to expand it. Typically things are grouped together, and if you choose to expand them, then you can edit them. The other thing I typically have to do with artwork is release it from something called a compound path, and you'll see that it just kind of filled in that shape. But now I have access to this. Now this guy, I'm going to take this, and if you remember, there's a shape builder tool that allows me just to option click to punch things out. That is actually, by option clicking, that's actually transparent. You can see that. But in here, maybe I want this to be a different color, and maybe I actually want it to be, you know, over here, whatever. But you're noticing that I've taken a logo and I've been able to modify it in its vector form. So this is all created in the vector form. Now, a lot of sites, many sites do not offer that capability of EPS. So if I were to say I want the SVG and download that, the nice thing is SVG is open in Illustrator. So if I were, get it? Let me see. Looks like it thought about it. Now it's just waiting. Still waiting. Okay, I'm going to look at my downloads folder for another SVG in case everything just slowed down there. But the point being that since it's vector, then I can access that in Illustrator and make changes as well. And you can export your files as SVG too. So it is probably the best format that you can use if you have the capability of using it. I don't know why this is just dying here. But while we're waiting for that to come up, let me just go back into Illustrator and talk about SVG a little bit. And I'll go back to my insects. So if you notice in that export asset window, I just left it at the default of PNG. But if I were to click and hold down on PNG, I could do JPEG, I could do SVG, I could do PDF. So there's lots of options. I could have saved out 68 SVG files. Actually, if I was doing SVG, I could probably just get rid of all these and say, I don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. I only need one that's in SVG because it's scalable and the developer can use that at various sizes. And then save them and myself a lot of work if you can. So coming back to this, we'll see if we got the downloads. We do. Okay, great. So here's an SVG file, and I'm just right clicking on this and I am saying to open it with Adobe Illustrator, because if I just double click on it, it's going to open in my browser. But okay, so I did download a truck at one point. And again, if I just choose this and I usually go to expand, you'll notice that I have two selection tools. One is my solid, which takes the whole item because it's all grouped together. And then I also have a direct select that will allow me to select individual points and make changes on them as well. So this is still grouped together. I'm going to go ahead, take this and choose Object, Compound Path, Release. There we go. I'm going to go back, take my Shape Builder tool, and Option click, or Alt click, get rid of those things. And now I can take this and say you are red and you are blue. But this, again, started out as an SVG. And if I wanted to, I could take it to the asset export and save it as an SVG. Or if it's just this one, I might choose Save As. Because when you just use the Save As window, you've got a choice of Illustrator, PDF, EPS, template, and SVG. And if I choose SVG, and I'll just put this out on my desktop, the really great thing is that I have additional options available to me. So in here, I'm choosing SVG, but I can even go down to the bottom and see more options. And one thing that's neat is, and I'll show you this in a moment, is that you can choose to make your SVG responsive. But the other thing is, if I click on SVG code, it actually opens up a notepad and it shows me the code. So if I wanted to copy the code to put in someplace, I could do that as well. And so I'm just going to say okay to this, but I'm going to take this and make it a little bit bigger. Now this white thing on the back, that's my artboard, and that does determine the bounding area. So if you receive client files and the stuff is hanging off of there, it typically means that when you print it, it's not going to appear. When you export it, this chunk might not appear. My artboard tool is down here, and with it, I can just click and drag to open things up, or it can go up and type in an exact amount at the top or use a base size. But I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more to this guy. I'm pressing Control-0 so I can see it all. And I am going to just put some text in here. Moving truck. Okay. So got this in here. And my artboard, not big enough, so I'm going to go under here and say fit to artwork bounds, and then it's going to automatically open up to that. So I've got my text in here, and this time it's a little bit bigger. So I am going to say save as. I want you to be an SVG. I'm going to call it moving truck. And it's out on my desktop, and I'm going to make sure that more options is on and that I do have responsive, and click OK. And then I'm just going to go out to my browser. And with this, I'm going to do a file open and find this moving truck SVG. And you'll notice it's already trying to respond. Do you see? I have a little bit of overlap there, which I'm not quite sure why. It's probably because I did not turn my text to outlines. Right now it's live text, which is probably confusing it. If I were to really be using this, I would do a create outlines ahead of time, which then turns that into a vector path. And then it is just understood as a shape instead of a live text. But still, nonetheless, you can see that my text is becoming smaller and larger, and so is my truck because of that responsiveness that has been in there. And so if I know what I'm doing with my code, or if I want to attach things to this, again, then I've got that ability to go into the SVG code and even edit it to include actions and such, so that you can navigate off of these as navigational tools and that sort of thing. But I imagine that if you're a developer, you know a little bit more about what to do with this. But now you can see all the code that's there. since I turned that into outline. It's giving me all that information. Now, taking this a little further, let me go back to my mobile app that I was working on, and maybe I want to put some text in here, and it's going to do automatic fill. So I'm going to make it a little smaller by pressing Control-Shift lesser than, and we'll get some text in here. It looks like my, yeah, so it's still a little big. All right. This is where the last read stories appear. And so I'm going to just put some additional text in here. I'm just copying it and I'm pasting it, and I'll make it a little bit smaller. So I'm just kind of visually making sure it works. And by the way, I never start in Illustrator. I always start from a sketch. And that's just so that, because you get all caught up in like sizes and fonts and that sort of thing here. But I'm going to take that layer and I'm going to hide it so that I can see a little better what I'm working on. So I've got this, and I mentioned this yesterday in my design class, but I want to mention it here too. You do have a CSS properties window that, like if I'm defining, I talked yesterday about defining a color ramp, like saying these are the only type sizes and styles I'm going to use. So what I typically do if I'm sending stuff to my developer is, once I've defined my H1 and H2 and how they're going to look, I will just click on them in Illustrator, and then it gives me all the code so that they don't have to go and enter it. So it's giving me the font family and the size and all that sort of information that I can provide to my developer. So no matter what I'm doing, I can do that. You can, I don't know how helpful this is, but if you have a lot of stuff on your page, you can select it all. And then down at the bottom of that CSS properties, there is a generate CSS, and it will generate the CSS for everything on that page. Now, if I want CSS generated for a particular item, like I'm taking a square and I'm going to go into my swatches panel. And let's see here. Well, yeah, we'll just apply a gradient to this. If I have an item that I want to separate from everything else, it actually uses your layers panel for the CSS. So I would have to create a new layer. So I'm in the layers panel, and then I hold down my Alt or Option key and click on the new layer. So it allows me to name it, and I'll call it my gradient. But once I have something on a layer, oh, geez, I didn't mean to do that. No, didn't mean to do that. Come up here and take this guy. All right. And hello to create. Okay, I did not name that exact box. So here, gradient. So I'm going into my layers panel, and as soon as I give it a name, you'll see it created a sub layer, and I just double clicked on it. It actually went and it created all the code for my gradient as well. So if you want code of individual objects, you'll notice that every time you put something down in Illustrator, whether you like it or not, it creates a sub layer. Okay, sub layer, you can see that's popping in there. If I want to get the code for that sub layer, like if I go back to artwork that was done previous to this, I have to come in and I have to make sure that layer has a name. This is a name. And then once I have a name on this object, and it is causing a problem right now, let me see if I can find that object and where it is. Then I can, here I'm going to select it so that I can see it there. Now I can see that it actually has code. So again, these are default names. You'll see that they automatically, those sub layers put brackets in, rectangle, rectangle, rectangle. So if I select it, nothing appears in here. As soon as I name it, name, all the code appears. Get it? Okay, so it's all based upon layers. That's the same with the SVG too. You have to have name layers for you to then identify objects. Maybe you want to attach additional code to your SVG. You have to go to the layers panel you have to select those objects and change them from their default name to an actual name, and then you'll see them as named items in the SVG code, which is really cool. Okay, so moving on, I want to show you one other way that we use these, that we use illustrators to save a lot of time and add consistency. Maybe I have a button. I already talked to you about symbols, but any of you who saw my session yesterday, I was mentioning that I try to make, if I'm going to make a button or a rectangle or a thumbnail or anything like that, I try to make it a golden rectangle. And the way to cheat in Illustrator is to make a perfect square by taking the rectangle and shift dragging it. And then in the transform panel, I will typically make sure the chain is not linked, so I'm not changing width and height at the same time. And I go into the width and I type asterisk, which means times 1.62, which is the Fibonacci rounded up. And now I have a perfect golden rectangle for my button. But on this particular button, not only do I want some text, but there's some things that I'm going to have all the time. And if you choose to use drop shadows, which are used in like Google material and such, you just want to make sure they're really subtle. Maybe the blur isn't really high, so it doesn't add a lot of extra unnecessary, what I call chrome, to your design. But I'm making a drop shadow, and I like this color. I like the fact this doesn't have a border. So you'll notice that I also have the ability to do something which is called save a style. And so in Illustrator, the other reason we use this is because I can just take that button and drag it in there, and it saves the properties of that square. It's not saving the square. If I wanted the square, I would have saved that as a symbol. But now, no matter what I select, like whether I do a circle later or a star or whatever it may be. By the way, Illustrator makes a horrible star unless you hold down your Option or Alt key, and then it turns into a real star. But I've got all these items, and I'll just say, I just press the letter D to make them the default color. Oh, I want those to have the same drop shadow and the same color. I can just take all of them and boom, they're all there. That's helpful in creating this stuff, but what if somebody comes back to you and says, your branding is wrong, that's totally the wrong color, it was supposed to be red. I can select one of the items, I can fix it, and just like with the symbols, I can hold down my Option key and drag it on top of that other one, and it finds every instance throughout the whole document, and it updates the properties. So again, huge time savings when you're trying to design and output this stuff in a consistent manner. Now, the other thing that we typically use Illustrator for, and let me just add another page so you can see how that's done. Like if I were creating a screen, I would take my artboard, and you'll see that if I just come up here, I can say new, and it will add another screen. This is another page essentially in Illustrator. So if I wanted multiple pages, then this is how I could do that. And just to show you what's being done, if I take this guy over here, and I'm just Option dragging it to clone it, this guy here, so we can see a difference. A lot of times what we do is we'll work in Illustrator, and then we'll say, okay, can you save this as, and we'll say that we wanted a PDF, and that's fine. And then when we're passing it around for suggestions or comments, it is actually creating a 3-page PDF. And you can even add your links in here. So like you could use your PDF and add some interactivity so that when somebody clicks on something, I could take and say, oh, when somebody clicks on something, I can use the bookmark tools. And I can select an object and then say when somebody clicks on this, they go to another place. But the benefit, of course, is it allows me to quickly and easily export a PDF of what I'm working on. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to show you, I'm going to kind of wrap up with how we work. When we're working in Illustrator or when we're working on UX design, this is the final stage. I kind of explained this yesterday, that if you're in here deciding colors and such prior to you determining the navigation and where things are going, then you are going down a rabbit hole that will just kill you in the end. You will spend hours trying to find the right stock image, the right font, all of that stuff. So that's why typically we'll use balsamic mockups or something really quick, or Sketch, and we'll, not the application Sketch. Unfortunately, that's Mac only, and many of our clients are PC. But we'll just literally sketch with a pencil and get our navigation down. And then this is the final stage that would come into at least prototype or build a couple of the screens so a developer knows what they're doing. If we're working with offshore clients, which I think in this case we had a mock-up every screen. Now this is work in progress right now, so it's kind of a mess, but if you start building, like if I were building this and I did, you'll notice that I can move these all around. Sometimes as you're working, because you can even alt drag a screen. So I can alt drag and clone that screen to come up with different versions, but it becomes a little bit of a mess. I'm gonna get rid of, or I'll put this guy on here. Gosh, I keep losing his eye. He doesn't need an eye. But what I can do is when I'm done, just for my sanity, I can go to the artboards panel and I can say, can you rearrange these artboards and choose a grid format and how much space I want in between each one, and it will clean it up for me. So you don't have to have it a mess. Okay, so as I was saying, this is the last thing that you do, but we use Illustrator for something called Style Tile as we're working on the UX. And the Style Tile saves us a lot of work. I actually gave a link to Chaz out there that he's gonna post that has my presentation from yesterday in it, and also has the rule of thirds grid and the Fibonacci golden mean, but also has a style tile in it. And the style tile is helpful. I'm going to see if I can find this in here, Design for Drupal. So it is a folder that I provided for everyone. It's an Illustrator file, but it looks like this. And the reason why I do this is it separates all the visual design that we're creating from the actual navigation. But in here, it allows you to take, let me close up some of these, take some of your stuff and separate it so that you can get approval on things without confusing people with other items. So in here, we use these all the time just to kind of build this stuff in, get rid of this stuff. It's about just selecting things, and we choose our font in here. Oh, we're not going to use that font. So we'll go up to character, and I know that I'm using Futura, so I just start typing F-U-T, and it comes up with all my Futura typefaces, and so I can set that as well. The other thing too, to help with consistency, I should mention, because if you can do it in Illustrator, you can save the properties, and that is going to help you build your CSS properly. It's also going to help you to just keep consistency throughout your application. So even with this, with window type, there's something called paragraph style, and if I have that text selected, I can just say this is a new paragraph style, and it's called this is my H2 maybe. But anytime I want to apply it, I can just click to select my text and say apply that. And then maybe down here I want to apply it, but I can apply that now as well. So again, if you know how to use Illustrator correctly, it helps you to really keep that consistency there. Now, let's say I want to put an image in here. I want to just show sample images so that people don't freak out about things that I'm putting in and they don't like them, whatever it may be. So I'm going to go ahead and take in a piece of artwork. Okay, so, and I want to put it inside of this. So you'll notice that what I can do is, if I just put this behind or bring this one in front, I can say object, arrange, bring to front. I can just slide that in here. I can select both of those. I can choose to press Control-7 or go under object, and it's called a clipping mask make. But I can show samples of pictures in here that I'm going to use too. So when we're talking to somebody, in many cases, we're doing something like something rapidly done in balsamic or whatever, and we're saying these are the types of colors that we're going to use, possible colors. These are the, you know, we might have some textures in here and some gradients, whatever. And one more thing before I wrap it up, because I just want to show you something that's really helpful, I think, is if you're creating these websites, there is something called a color guide that if you have a branding color and you look in the color guide, it will look at the color wheel and provide you all the different colors that, you know, based upon the color wheel, triad, high contrast, compound, so that you can set up a color scheme, perhaps that maybe you wouldn't have thought of normally. So, and then, yeah, so I can see all these colors, and then I can even click on a color I like that, and I can add them to my swatches panel so that I always have those that I can refer to. Here, let me go ahead and make sure I added them. Stuff, color guide, and here, we'll say these right here. Let me go take, whoops, get that color back. But you'll see the button here, add to swatches. And now I know that when I'm building this, I'm going to use maybe these color themes. And I can feel confident that they're good. And I talked yesterday about the rule of thirds. If you are building stuff with the rule of thirds, which is kind of neat. There is a grid tool that's hiding in your line tool. And if you click and drag out, it makes a whole bunch of grids. But if you press the lesser than, you can reduce or add grids so that you can eventually get to the rule of thirds. And then you press Command-5 and it's a guide. So I could position this over here so that I know I'm putting this stuff in a good place. Command-5, now guide, and now I can just say, oh, rule of thirds, this should be in the intersection. Oops, didn't mean to select that. And this should be on the intersection if I'm following this rule. This should maybe be moved down a little bit, but again, bam, an hour, right? So do you guys have questions? I know some of you came in with specific questions about things. Did this all make sense, or was this like crazy stuff? Make sense?
I just have a question. With
Yeah.
Adobe's introduction of like Adobe XD, do you see the processes changing with this new?
No, I love XD, by the way. XD is experience design, if you guys don't know what it is, but it works so fluently with Illustrator because you can build your whole design. XD is great. It allows you to build interactive applications, and I wish almost that I was doing something on it. But it allows you to build interactive prototypes, and you can just copy and paste or import stuff from Illustrator. So I can make things in XD, or I can just paste stuff in. But the cool thing is that I can add interactivity and connect from page to page, and it allows for some animation. It even allows for scrolling, that sort of thing. So, but this allows me to preview my artwork, and I can even share it with somebody and they can preview it, and it's touchable on a phone. So you can preview it on a phone and it works, and it even has scrolling capabilities. It's got this phenomenal feature, and I know I've got to finish this up, but it's got this phenomenal feature like you produce, you place a picture, and then, so it works much like Illustrator, but when you place things, import, let me just take a picture really quickly, and pictures, faces. So if you like Illustrator, you would definitely love, for some reason, oh, I put it over there. Love XD, and just to give you an idea here, like if I'm putting stuff in here, like a list of text or whatever, you'll notice that I can just click on repeat grid. I'll just put a line here so you can see it happening. But I can just take this and say, repeat the grid, and I want to put a whole bunch of pictures in, and I want it to go here, and I want it to scroll, so you can even allow that scrolling. But that all gets, you build it in Illustrator and then copy and paste it, because I find the XD is an MVP product right now. It's being worked on as we speak, so not all the features are there, so that's lacking some of the Illustrator drawing tools that you might need.
So we like send Adobe all sorts of like emails, everything.
No, I love the product. It works great. I mean, if I'm on my artboard tool, in fact, you'll see that if I select this artboard, like it has even a view box, but I can change this. You'll see a little dotted line there. I don't know why I keep doing that. Let me get it. You what?
Another session is starting.
3 minutes. Oh my God, they don't give me any time. Okay, I'll get out of here. But I did want to show you this, that you'll notice that, see, I can even scroll in the app, you know, so it's kind of cool. All right, I'm done. So if you have questions, come see me. We have a table out there, so you can ask me questions. I'm writing a book right now in XD for dummies. So I'm learning a lot about it. Yeah. Oh, I think it worked that time. It's working.